It all started on a Sunday morning, the kind that smelled like fresh coffee and lawn clippings. I was outside trimming the hedges, minding my own business, when I saw two men I didn't recognize stepping out of a black SUV. They looked official. Tactical vests, radios, utility belts. I figured maybe they were responding to a call in the neighborhood, until they walked straight up to my front porch. My son answered the door, still in pajamas, and before he could ask a single question, they grabbed him. No explanation, no warrant, just handcuffs and a shove into the back of their car. I dropped the shears and sprinted over, shouting, asking who they were and what my son had done. One of them flashed a badge, barely long enough for me to catch the shine. Interfering with HOA security, he mumbled. Then they were gone. Now, let me be clear. I've worn a real badge for 28 years. I'm not just a cop. I'm the police commissioner. And what those two imposters didn't realize was that they just messed with the wrong dad. We live in a gated neighborhood, quiet, tight-laced, the kind of place where everyone waves but no one really knows each other. Our HOA president, Joyce Langston, runs it like her own private kingdom. Still, this was a step too far, even for her. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if your neighborhood's ever had an HOA nightmare of its own, because what happened next? It shattered every illusion I had about suburban safety, and kicked off a chain of events I never could have seen coming. I drove straight to the station. Didn't call it in, just walked into the squad room with my blood boiling and my jaw clenched tight. My deputy spotted me right away. "You okay, boss?" he asked. I wasn't. I told him what happened. Gave him a full description of the uniforms, the vehicle, everything. 5 minutes later, I had dispatch run the plates. The car wasn't registered to any law enforcement agency in the state. That's when I knew we weren't dealing with real cops. These guys were fakes, pretending to be officers, kidnapping my son, and doing it in broad daylight like they had nothing to fear. My hands were shaking when I called my wife. She was already at the county jail, trying to find out where our son had been taken. "They won't even tell me if he's here," she whispered, on the verge of tears. One of them said it was a private holding for HOA violations. What does that even mean? Private holding? Violations? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I headed straight for the HOA office. It's a little brick building tucked behind the community clubhouse. Feels like a DMV that never sees sunlight. And sure enough, who do I find sitting behind the front desk? Joyce Langston, chairwoman of the HOA, her pearl earrings gleaming like she'd been waiting for me. "Oh, Commissioner," she said, smiling like a snake in a flower bed. "So glad you stopped by. We've had some trouble with your boy." I didn't say a word, just stared her down, trying to keep from losing it, because right then I realized something chilling. Joyce hadn't just authorized a takedown. She orchestrated it. And I was about to find out just how far she'd gone to turn this neighborhood into her own little empire. Joyce didn't flinch when I told her those men impersonated officers. If anything, her smile got wider. "Private security contractors," she said, folding her hands like she was explaining the weather, "licensed through a third-party enforcement provider, perfectly legal within our HOA bylaws." Beneath the surface, I could feel my pulse ticking like a bomb. "You sent two men to detain my son without contacting the police, without a warrant. You call that legal?" She just blinked at me. He was in violation of Community Ordinance 8.7, unauthorized drone usage. It flew over the Langston residence twice. And we all know how drones can be used for surveillance these days. "That's it." I asked, "A toy drone? That's why you sent in fake cops to haul a kid off his own porch." Her tone turned syrupy. "We have rules here, Commissioner. I know you understand the importance of enforcement." I could barely breathe. My son, a 17-year-old kid with a part-time job and a camera drone he saved up for, was being held in some undisclosed location because Joyce Langston felt watched. I demanded to know where they took him. She refused to say. Said it was above her clearance level. I left before I did something I couldn't take back. I called every precinct, every substation, every juvenile facility in a 50-mile radius. Nothing. No records. No bookings. It was like he'd vanished. But then 2 hours later, I got a call from a blocked number. My son's voice. Shaky. Scared. Dad, they won't let me out. They say you have to come alone. That if you tell anyone else, I'll get charged with trespassing and harassment. I told him to stay calm. Told him I was coming. But inside, I was boiling. Because now I knew this wasn't about a drone. This was personal. I drove like a man possessed. My cruiser hit the curves on Deer Hollow like it was chasing ghosts. I knew every inch of that neighborhood, every alley, every back road, and yet my own son had been disappeared right out from under me. They wanted me to come alone? Fine, but I didn't come unarmed. I had my badge, my sidearm, and every ounce of authority they clearly forgot I held. The location turned out to be an old maintenance shed behind the HOA storage units. It was padlocked, tucked behind a row of privacy hedges, damn near invisible unless you knew where to look. When I pulled up, the SUV from earlier was parked out front. Same fake decals. Same smug attitude on the guy, standing watch. Sunglasses, earpiece, hand on his belt like he thought he was guarding a government secret. He stepped forward. "You alone?" he asked. "Where's my son?" I said, flashing my real badge. He didn't even blink. "We'll need to confirm your identity before." I cut him off with a single step forward. That badge is real. My title is police commissioner. And unless you want the sheriff, the state troopers, and the feds breathing down your neck by sundown, you're going to open that shed and let my son walk out. Right now. For the first time, his face changed. A crack in the armor. He hesitated. Reached for his radio. That's when the door creaked open from the inside. And there he was, my boy, eyes red, wrists still bearing marks from the zip ties. He ran straight into my arms, shaking like a leaf in a thunderstorm. Behind me, I heard the guard say, almost nervously, "We were just following HOA enforcement protocols." I turned to him slowly. "No, what you did was felony kidnapping." By that evening, I had my son home and an active investigation underway. I filed a report myself. Kidnapping, impersonation of law enforcement, unlawful detainment. You name it, I listed it. I had the photos, the video, the damn SUV's license plate. My department? They were stunned. Not just at the audacity of the whole thing, but that it was happening inside a neighborhood like ours. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did my son. He kept waking up, flinching at shadows, asking if they were coming back. That did something to me I can't explain. Because no father, no cop should have to look his own kid in the eye and say, "I don't know if we're safe in our own home." The next morning, Joyce Langston made her move. She held a community safety meeting in the clubhouse, passed out flyers accusing my son of being a threat to neighborhood privacy, claimed his drone was part of a coordinated surveillance attempt, and that our household posed a security risk to others. She stood there, in her silk scarf and fake smile, painting us as criminals, while the actual criminals she hired walked free. What she didn't know was that I was watching from the back of the room. I recorded every word. She even bragged out loud that the HOA had taken matters into their own hands since the police force clearly had no interest in enforcing our standards. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about a drone or a rule book. This was about power. And Joyce? She was trying to build her own private regime right under our noses. But the thing about regimes is they always think they're untouchable, until someone with a real badge reminds them just how small they really are. The clip went viral, at least in local circles. By noon the next day, it was all over the neighborhood Facebook group, the HOA forum, even circulating among my department. Joyce, standing there like the queen of a petty dictatorship, bragging about detaining a teenager for flying a drone. It hit like a thunderclap. People who'd once nodded politely at her in the clubhouse, they were now re-watching that video, seeing her for what she really was. Still, she didn't back down. If anything, she doubled down. That afternoon, I got served a formal letter from the HOA attorney, claiming I had interfered with an active enforcement procedure and was now under review for removal from the neighborhood. Let that sink in. She tried to evict the police commissioner. And yet, what rattled me most wasn't the letter. It was how calm she looked while chaos bloomed around her. Like she still believed this was chess, and I was 3 moves behind. But she underestimated one thing. I wasn't just coming for her through the law. I was coming for everything she'd built. My next stop was the state attorney's office. I brought everything, footage, documents, a full sworn statement. But what sealed it was a discovery of her private security contracts. Turns out, Joyce had created a slush fund, dues funneled into a safety improvement account. From there, payments made to the same 2 men who took my son. Unauthorized, off the books, 0 background checks. That's not just shady. That's criminal. The ADA was shocked. We've had complaints about Langston, she said, flipping to the files. But no one's ever brought us this. I looked her square in the eye. She built a kingdom in our cul-de-sac, and she thinks no one can touch her. The ADA smiled. She's wrong. I spent the next 3 days working the case like I was back on the beat. Early mornings, late nights, coffee gone cold beside stacks of files. Every HOA policy, every budget report, every email my neighbors forwarded me anonymously. Turns out, Joyce had been operating like a small-town despot for years, finding families for backyard toys, threatening single moms over mailbox paint, charging mysterious compliance fees that vanished without a paper trail. She didn't just enforce the rules, she invented them. So I called in reinforcements. Quietly, my buddy Ray, Internal Affairs, my old patrol partner Devin, now with the state AG's office, and a retired FBI analyst I knew from back when things in this town used to be simpler. Together, we started mapping out a case, not just for kidnapping, but for conspiracy, fraud, and abuse of power under color law. But we needed one more piece. A whistleblower. That's when she called. Her name was Carla, a former HOA board member who'd stepped down last year for personal reasons. Turns out she left because Joyce was getting scary. Secret meetings, cash withdrawals, hiring private security with 0 accountability. And worst of all, she'd seen the file on me. Joyce kept a dossier on problem residents. Mine was 3 inches thick. You have no idea how deep this goes, Carla told me, voice shaking. I asked if she'd testify. She didn't even hesitate. After what she did to your son. Absolutely. That night, I brought my son into the office, sat him down and told him everything. The case, the plan, what was about to happen. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "Let's finish it." For the first time in days, I felt something crack through the rage. Hope. It all came to a head on a Tuesday. That morning, a multi-agency task force descended on the HOA building. Unmarked vehicles. Agents in plain clothes. Badges flashing. Joyce Langston was already in her office, sipping tea like it was any other day. When they walked in and asked her to stand up, she barely blinked. "I assume this is about the child incident," she said, calm as you please. "I've already filed statements with our counsel." But the lead agent wasn't smiling. "Ma'am," he said, holding up a thick folder, "this isn't about a drone. It's about wire fraud, misuse of public funds, and conspiracy to impersonate law enforcement." Her face changed then, like someone had yanked the mask off. I was across the street, watching from the precinct's front steps as they walked her out in cuffs. My phone buzzed every 10 seconds, texts from neighbors, reporters, even a city council member I hadn't heard from in years. The footage made the evening news. HOA president arrested in sweeping suburban scandal. The headline read. The picture? Joyce, mid-sneer, trying to hide her face from the cameras. But it didn't end there. With Joyce gone, the rest of the board scrambled. Half of them resigned within 48 hours. The HOA attorney tried to claim ignorance. But with Carla's testimony and the audit we triggered, it was clear he was neck-deep too. By the end of the week, the HOA was dissolved under emergency order. A temporary administrator was appointed by the city to oversee the transition, and those fake officers, arrested. Turns out they weren't just unlicensed, they had records. Assault, fraud. One of them had a warrant out in another state. They'll never see the outside of a gated community again. And my son, he got an official apology, not a press release. Face to face. From the mayor. The silence in our neighborhood was different after that, not the peaceful kind, like a quiet Saturday with birds chirping and sprinklers hissing. No, this was heavy, like the air itself was embarrassed, ashamed of what had been happening in plain sight. Neighbors started acting strange. Some couldn't look me in the eye. Others dropped off casseroles and said things like, "We had no idea," or "She fooled us all." And maybe that was true, but part of me wondered how many people had seen the signs and just looked the other way. My son went back to school, but he walked a little slower, talked a little less. The kid who once spent hours flying his drone, editing video, building confidence with every shot, he wouldn't even take it out of the box. Said he didn't want to be watched again. It broke me, not because I didn't get justice. We did. The courts moved fast. Joyce was denied bail, citing flight risk and public endangerment. The charges piled up so high, her own lawyer walked out mid-hearing. She'll be in prison a long, long time, but that didn't fix what she took. Trust, innocence, safety. There's a kind of violence that doesn't leave bruises, but still scars. And my son, he bore every one of them in silence. One night, I found him outside on the porch, just staring up at the stars. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but didn't speak. Then finally, after a long pause, he said, "I thought you weren't going to come. I thought they'd get away with it." I swallowed hard, put my hand on his shoulder. "They almost did," I said, "but they forgot who your dad is." He didn't smile, just nodded again. But he leaned into me, and that was everything. It's been 6 months now. The HOA is gone, replaced by a community council that actually listens. We hold open meetings once a month at the rec center. No secret votes. No hidden fines. Just neighbors talking, disagreeing sometimes, but doing it face to face. Like humans. My son, he's doing better. Takes time, but healing usually does. A few weeks back, I found him in the backyard with the drone again. He didn't say anything, just gave me a sheepish little smile and took it up into the air. I watched him through the window, arms outstretched, eyes tracking the skyline, like something lost was finally floating back down. We never really talked about that day again, not in detail. He keeps most of it locked away, and I let him. But I keep the report on my desk, framed, not out of pride, but as a reminder, because what happened to us? It wasn't just about a corrupt HOA. It was about what happens when people forget they live next to other people, when rules become more important than reason, when a title, president, commissioner, whatever, becomes a weapon instead of responsibility. Joyce Langston tried to build a fiefdom in a cul-de-sac. She forgot one thing. People fight back, not with fists, not with fire, but with truth, with receipts, with voices that refuse to stay quiet just because someone with a clipboard said they should. We still live on the same street, same trees, same fences, but it feels different now. A little freer, a little wiser. And every time I wave to a neighbor and they wave back, not out of fear or obligation, but respect, I know we made it through something. Hard, ugly, necessary, and we're still here, together,